Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's In the Artist Studio. I'm Elena Gross, the Curatorial Manager of Exhibitions and Emerging Artists Program at MOAD, and it's my great pleasure today to be speaking and touring in virtual space with Bay Area-based artist 5/5 Collective, who were also previous emerging artists with MOAD. So that's exciting. Before we get to the conversation, I just want to go through a few housekeeping things. First off, again, for everyone who's joining, all of our audience members who are joining us, please write in and tell us where you're joining us from. MOAD's physical building may be closed due to the mandatory shelter in place, but you can still get your fill of art and artists of the African Diaspora. Each Wednesday at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard, join MOAD staff members like myself as we visit with some of our favorite artists in their studios to see what they're currently working on and how their work is changing as a result of the quarantine. This is a rare opportunity to hear from artists directly from their studios. We will follow all talks with an audience Q&A, so please feel free to leave your questions in either the chat box or the Q&A box. And please visit our website to see which artists we have coming up. We have about 3 more for the rest of this year. You can also go back and watch all of our past talks on the MOAD YouTube channel. This series was made possible by generous donations from the Westridge Foundation, our wonderful MOAD members and viewers like you. Thank you all for your continued support. MOAD stands in solidarity with Black Lives Matter. We honor and mourn the senseless murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Tony McDade, and so many others who have lost their lives at the hands of police brutality and racial injustice, including those whose names we do not know. We also like to give a land acknowledgement. Most of us are settler, immigrants, or descendants of those forcefully brought to this continent. Our institutions were founded upon exclusions and erasures of the indigenous peoples whose land we are located. With deep respect, MOAD acknowledges that even in virtual space, our people, our work, and our network servers are on native lands. And we thank the indigenous people of the Bay Area who have stewarded this land throughout the generations. Lastly, if you've been enjoying this series or any MOAD programming, please consider donating to MOAD online. Donations of any amount are always welcome, and a link to where you can donate will also be in the chat. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to today's featured artists, 5/5ths. So 5/5ths is a multimedia collective co-founded by Tania Balan-Gaubert, Troy Chu, and Nkiruka Oparah during their MFA at California College of the Arts. 5/5ths is dedicated to exploring Blackness as an identity, consciousness, reference, and embodied experience through space, language, and visual culture. Balan-Gaubert uses photography, found and ready-made objects, assemblage, and video combined with personal stories, spirituality, and lore to examine race, transnational identity, culture, and belonging. Chu's work explores the African diaspora within the urban culture through painting and sculpture, while also questioning the definitions of fine art and folk art. Through drawing, collage, video, assemblage, and performance, Oparah builds multimedia portraits and ephemeral forms from familial and cultural images, found objects, and repurposed materials to investigate memory, otherness, and the multiplicity of identities within them. 5/5ths organizes exhibitions according to 5 pillars known only to its founding members. Each project is curated based on the space, ritual, and intuition, and current research. Welcome, 5/5ths.
Thank you.
How are you?
For having us.
Yeah, thank you for joining us again. You're part of the MOAD family, so it's exciting to have you back, even in virtual space with us for a little while. How are you? I like to start things off. How are you all doing, like as people, even before we get to like the work itself?
Doing good over here. About to be moving out of this studio, so it's kind of like, and out of the Bay, so it's kind of like.
Oh wow, where are you going?
LA. Yeah, but yeah, good transition, hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How's this time been for each of you in terms of making, in terms of your practices?
Like, that's a long answer.
Yeah.
Well, we've got time, so.
I feel like I'm finally getting on track at the end of the year. We started off the year together at the Growlery in San Francisco, in a residency that we were there for 3 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that was amazing. We were working every day. We were always with each other. So we had like a lot flowing, and then the pandemic hit. So then you know, we had to kind of go to our corners. And after that, it's just been hard to make. I just recently, I'm in Brooklyn, New York right now. And I'm bi-coastal, but not really because of the pandemic. So now that I have a studio out here, and that's been slow, but I feel like I'm picking up now. So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Huh?
Yeah, it's your turn now.
I feel like it's been like up and down for me. Yeah, definitely started out on like a high note with fivefifths at the Growlery, and just like I feel like we were doing a lot of different things, and we had like a lot of energy in that space. But like, you know, finding out about the pandemic there, and also like entering into shelter in place there was really weird and kind of surreal in a lot of ways. And then transitioning, like I live and work in Oakland, so like transitioning from San Francisco and like not being at my home back into my home during that time was weird and interesting shift. And then I had a show earlier in the year, and so there was like a burst of energy over the summer of like making stuff, and then but it was kind of ideas that had already started. So there was this sort of like high point of like a lot of production happening. And then I feel like after that, it's kind of been like, I'm just starting to pick up work again. And still working on, I wouldn't say it's smaller, like maybe a smaller scale, like doing like more drawings, so like very like
Yeah,
the zoned in kind of scale, like drawing, like, and like digitally too. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Troy, how's your production been over the course of these last 8-9 months?
Yeah, I kind of just didn't stop because I didn't have shit to do. And I just, yeah. And I also had like shows that were in the works, but like the pandemic kind of pushed them off until like all at the same time. But yeah, I had to keep working, and I also just didn't have it. I have to keep working or else I'll go crazy.
Yeah, I understand that. So since I know we are not going to view any of your studios today, we discussed that just briefly before the call started, but do you want to talk about kind of what your workspace, what your studio space looks like now, that you're no longer at the Growlery, you're no longer in perhaps more traditional studio spaces, or maybe you are, just what does your space kind of look like these days?
Well, I can start. I actually can show you guys around because
I
this is our last like little time here. It's not much in here, but it is the Headlands studio. It's a bunch of stuff, but yeah, empty. But that's like a mural I was practicing for when I did a Facebook commission. And then nice little view. Beach is over there too, but open it up, let y'all see. Yeah. But yeah, here at the Headlands, it's pretty nice. And it sucks that I'm gonna be leaving on Friday, but yeah, that's my studio situation right now. Yeah.
Pretty nice studio setup.
Yeah, it's so big.
It's so big.
That's like an apartment.
Studio.
Like,
and with a view.
And a view.
Should we all be so lucky in 2021?
No, definitely apply for Headlands. Like, there's all type of artists here.
Yeah.
I can talk about mine a little bit, I guess. Well, I currently work from home, and my studio is like in my house. I guess that's what that implies. It's like in a. So I feel like you know, it's like my personal space and also like my studio space right now. I have um, like my libraries in here and I screen print in here, but also paint in here. I have like the desk that I'm on. Um, and yeah, I also share the space with someone else. So it's kind of like yeah.
Like
So
negotiating space as well. Yeah.
exactly. But it's convenient. So that's nice. But yeah, it is different because like since grad school, just kind of moving through studio spaces via like residencies. And now I'm in a space where I'm just like working from home. So yeah.
Yeah. My space is just pretty bare because I just moved in here. So I just have a table, I have a chair. I didn't even have a chair to sit on until like today.
Well,
and I was
thank
like, what
goodness.
am
So
I
you didn't
gonna
have to do the standing up.
Yeah. And I was like, what am I gonna do? So I had chairs in storage, actually chairs from the series that I had made or started in the Bay that involved chairs. So I brought one here today, and it's not finished, but I'm sitting on it. And then I have a painting on this wall that I'm working on that I've been working on forever. But it's up now, so it'll get done soon. And I share that there's like 30 or 40 other studios in here. They're not all filled. A lot of people left when COVID happened and some other things that transitioned with this building. So there's only a few of us in here now, but yeah, it's a cool space. Yeah.
Well, I think, you know, to kind of, so one, this is kind of an experiment. We've never hosted a collective for one of these before. So it'll be interesting to kind of see. I think my hope is that you all kind of like talk amongst yourselves and in response to the questions, because I think it's really interesting. I'm hoping to tease out, I guess, like some of the complexities of working collectively, especially right now when you are forced to kind of be distant in a certain way, while also being able to have you be able to share a little bit of your practices with us. So I guess to start off, like, how has that been these past few months in thinking about your work, your collective work in separate spaces?
Well, it's interesting because we did start the year off together. I think that was kind of grounding for us all. And I think the projects that we kind of knew that we were going into the gallery for a while. So we had sort of been planning into that space for a minute. So we had all these ideas that we wanted to execute. And I think like the time there was kind of helped guide us, I think, where we're at now. Like we're still working through what we are going to do next, but I think that was a guiding time because we started some projects there that like I think we're expanding on now in different ways, or maybe getting more into the like nitty gritty of those things and how we move those projects into the future and kind of make them a little bit bigger. Does that make sense what I'm saying, y'all?
Yeah. That's what it is.
Yeah.
During this quarantine time, it's like allowed us to focus on the nitty gritty stuff because we don't necessarily have to be doing physical things, which is what we like to do. So it's kind of like we're using this time to prepare for when the world can.
Yeah.
It's definitely turned us more internal in a way. Like I think like it's kind of mirroring my personal practice in that like I definitely have been doing a lot more self like reflection and like figuring out like how to pivot from this moment that we're in. So I think that's happening within 5/5ths too. Just like looking at ourselves and like who we are in the world and like who we want to be in the world and how we're going to do that.
How did you all decide to begin working together? I mean, your practices, you know, there are similarities throughout, but they're all pretty different in certain ways as well. So I know you guys all came together through the MFA program at CCA, but how did you make the decision to start to kind of marry your practices in within the formation of the collective? Like, where did the origination for it begin?
Well, we were one of three, well, there were four Black students in our program, in our cohort. One left. At that point, we kind of didn't really know each other, but I think we started to, am I remembering correctly? We started to have kind of similar experiences during our critiques, during studio visits, that I think we were all mulling over, and naturally, as we spent more time in as a group, as a cohort, we gravitated to one another and started saying, like, are you experiencing that? Is this happening to you? Largely around the issue of people not knowing how to talk about our work or address our work, or what questions they could ask, you know, wanting to be PC or politically correct and not offend us, things like that. Whereas we're like, nah, just say what you feel, say what you think. Like, you know, we'll deal with that. And then from there, we started sharing resources. We had started like a little blog that where we would just all like log on, share something, and then we would talk about it later together. And yeah, that's how, right? Am I leaving anything out? Is that okay?
Just like finding like that within the program too, of just like kind of hitting up against the same, like across classes, just hitting up again, like hearing about the same Black artists all the time. Like just like the same people would come up, and it's like we had interest, sort of course we were interested in those like bigger names like Kara Walker and David Hammonds, but we had specific interests too that we weren't seeing talked about in our classes. So we were coming to each other to be like, oh, I found this, or I'm looking, you know, like just kind of fill in the gaps. And so the blog was kind of a way to do that.
Who were some of the artists that did you find you were all, I mean, it sounds like you found you were all collectively looking at certain artists or drawing certain inspirations and certain references into your work. Who were some of those people that you identified kind of early on that helped kind of tether you all together?
Oh, tethered us together.
I feel like it was a lot of individual artists that we like just crossed with each other, and like all of them kind of did that, like the combination of all of them. Because I can't say like one or a few, you know, like have been that like anchor, like we want to, but I could say like we've been to a place like the Underground Museum in Los Angeles, and the way they run that place and the idea around it, I feel like that inspired how we thought about what Five Fifths could be in the future or what it is.
Yeah, because I think that was an experience we all shared together. Like we were all did that as a part of like our first year grad experience, and and I think it comes up pretty often, you know, within our conversations as like something that we are consistently inspired by. Tanya,
I was gonna say I do remember talking about Thornton Dial a lot.
Yeah,
I think me and Nkiru overlapped a lot regarding like looking at his work early on. I also at one point was in New York, and I was able to see the Arthur J. show, the Love is the Message, and I was like obsessed with that. And I would tell Troy and Nkiru about it every day. We talked about, I remember that. Oh, I feel like everybody, when anybody drops anything new, we're like, did you see this? Did you see that? You know? So, of course, Kehinde always comes up when people would look at Troy's work, like his paintings, even though Kehinde was doing figurative work and at Troy, when you came in, what were you working on? You were still doing still life, right? Or
Yeah, mostly still life.
yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in sort of obviously the origins of your collaborative work began within the academic space, which I think lends itself to exactly what you're saying, this kind of like sharing of resources and this very exploratory way of navigating your practices, was part of the idea in continuing the collective, continuing this relationship and therefore continuing the collective after CCA. Do you find that working together in this way on these different installations is a means of continuing that kind of almost like critique based or seminar style work in your individual practices? Like, do you find it as as a incubator or a springboard for your individual work?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like, we have ideas that go beyond our art too, that we want to get done individually, that we put together in 5/5ths, and we kind of just incubate them, and it becomes a child of 5/5ths, like something that we do together. Like, we've done a paint and sip kind of thing where I was like a teacher, and then Tania was a teacher one time. So it was just like things that we wanted to get done or see done, kind of we manifested and make it happen. But yeah, not only like art or shows necessarily, but yeah.
And I think in those kind of spaces, like, our practices overlap a lot, like this idea of like reverence or like honoring people, which I feel like me and we all do it in our different ways, but I feel like this was kind of a way for us to do that, but also to like engage with like our community, and and I feel like it's like a form that we want to continue or expand on, I think, in future projects. That makes a lot of sense to us, and what we've already been thinking about.
So in a way, would you say that part of your work together is, I mean, the community focus is really interesting, right? So it seems like a lot of your work is kind of you're not just in a collective with one another, you're kind of in collective with your greater communities in a certain way too. And does that really inform kind of the way you envision the work that you do together?
I think so. I feel like what's coming to mind, I think also is like I'm kind of going backwards a little bit, and y'all can add on to this, but thinking about how music has actually been such a huge influence on like a lot of what we do. Like, we're looking at artists, but we're like, I think music informs it almost just as much, it feels like, or maybe more. Like, I think that's such a huge part of it. And I was thinking about like when we started in the grad space, like we were having this sort of center, like gathering, like moment for people to gather, like in the center of the space, and also creating like a playlist every time we did a show or exhibition or a group show, or like just showed our own work together. And that was like such a huge part of it. But I think that's like kind of talks about like what you just asked, is kind of like all those things, sort of like all these different communities sort of like overlapping in a way.
And then also like trying to find ways to work with other artists that we know and that we are like paying attention to, and that we look at, but that are our peers. So like when we were at the Growlery, it was a residency that was our residency, but we part of our time there, we created a residency within it that was our 5/5ths residency.
Meta
residency. And we brought in 2 artists, Vincent Miranda and Gaia Weiss, and that was really dope. And they actually came into the house to live with us. So during their own time, as not at the same time, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and we kind of just being able to like use what we have access to provide access to others.
Oh, wow.
That's been like really
Fine.
like where we want to go. Like that's yeah. So we've been making baby steps, but like yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk a little bit about some of the installations that you've done, because obviously with such disparate practices, kind of bringing together all of these different elements, right? There have to be certain challenges to that. And so what have you found has been kind of the challenges to putting together these exhibitions, or these, while trying to marry each of your, you know, video work, installation-based work, painting? I mean, that's challenging for a curator anyway, for group shows, but like to be able to do it so consistently while also being more, I mean, it's your work, so you're more personally invested in it as well. So how do you kind of make the decisions around how everything comes together?
Well, I feel like we talk all the time, like
Yeah.
almost too much. Like, just kidding. Well,
Bang, Troy.
No. For Troy, it's too much.
Or be hanging up on us.
Yes. Yeah.
because I don't even talk to my mama as much as I talk to y'all. But nah, it's because we have this idea of what we want to do, and because we're always exchanging information, it's kind of like we're on the same wave with all the stuff that we're thinking about. So it might not be talking about the same thing within each work, but like it's kind of like a underlying. It's hard to explain, but it's just like a connection that we have with all of the work that we're doing. Probably because we show each other all the time, like just constant updates. Like,
yeah.
I feel like it's a multiple stage process too, right? Like it's like we're starting from individual practices, but like we are noticing the overlaps in ideas, like sort of in the very early stages. And so then by the time you do a show, it's like we've already discussed like all these overlapping or ways that the connections can happen like in a physical space. So it's like on multiple levels of the creative process where we're accessing each other. So by the time it gets to this point, it feels like it's almost like once we like I remember the like walking into the MOAD space, the emerging artist space, and just we were all together, and I just feeling like we already kind of knew what we want. Like once we were in the space, we already was like, okay, well this goes here, this, you know, like we kind of already had a sense. So it was just a matter of like figuring out the details. And I think it's like kind of what Troy was saying, just like being able to access each other at like all these different points of connection is what, so it doesn't really necessarily feel challenging. It feels challenging, I think, to like have other people be around. Like
I was gonna say, I was not the program manager at that time, so I have no idea how, like, what was that process like, kind of from an institutional standpoint, having the way that you all work so closely together, but then having like kind of the institutional component coming in at the same time. Was that challenging, or did that feel like really like helpful and useful for you? Like having an outside perspective in that way.
I looked at it kind of like as collaborating with them, like access to all of this stuff that they wanted to let us use our stuff in. And that was like the first time we were able to paint a whole room. All this crazy stuff. So it was like, okay, we can do this. But I don't know if that totally answered the question.
We didn't really have any challenge. I think sometimes I mean in the past when we've done smaller, like because the MOAD was our first like huge show. So prior to that, like smaller spaces, like the challenge with the space can come up. But we never force anything. Like that's like as important. Like that we never force. Like if I have this thing that I've been working on and I love it, like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So we're very like cognizant of like what we're all thinking and looking at and listening to, even that, like Nkiruka said earlier about music, like what are y'all listening to right now? And then like, oh, and then that branches into like all these ideas. And that also, you know, helps with like basically like curating our working spaces. Yeah.
How does the work come together, I guess? So you all, you know, you all have your own independent studios where you're making, where you're, you know, invested in your personal practices, but then eventually you have to like merge it. So I'm just curious as to when you're making on an individual level, are you thinking about, are you constantly thinking about about your collective members, like how it's going to work in concert, or do you or does that come together when you're in the space together? Like when does that kind of, that merging start? Like how did the pieces themselves, the actual works themselves, like start to find themselves together?
I think we just, go ahead, Tanya.
No, go ahead, Troy.
Oh, I think it's just like we just make a bunch of work in general on our own, and then we kind of are our own curators too. So we just select based on what we see all of us have, and seeing if there is an underlying kind of message or something within all of the works, or some kind of key point that's in all the work, and then we go from there. Really, it's just, the individual practice is kind of perfect. Like we just have a bunch of things to look at to put into a show that creates the idea, or created from an idea that we had.
Yeah, like I know for me, like nothing's ever like off limits to like a 5/5 project or show or whatever. It's just if it comes together now, it comes together. Like we do definitely like do studio visits and that kind of thing, like and kind of critique and all of that when we're, you know, in the same place. Well, actually no, we've done them over the phone too.
We looked at each other work over the phone.
Yeah, but also what, like, we've also branched into making like singular works where we all touch the work. And so like that initially I think was a little bit of a challenge, only because we were like, I don't want to step on any toes, but it came together. Like our zine, we have a video series that we started together. We always kind of return to that, like being able to balance out curating a space where all of our works that we've individually made come together, but then also being like, okay, this time around for whatever, like if this exhibition we want to apply for or something like that, how are we going to make one work together?
And also I think about like sort of foundationally, right? Like the pillars that we're working from are kind of like the places where we felt we were all kind of connecting.
Secret pillars?
Huh?
The secret pillars?
The secret pillars. The pillars, they really, like, I feel like they're sort of foundational in like how our individual practices overlap anyway. So it's like we kind of have many levels that like this is operating on, like where it feels intuitive because we've already kind of established that these things are the things that are going to be our guiding kind of things that we want to zone in on when we're working as 5/5ths. And so, I think that answers the question.
Yeah, it does. No, it does. Definitely does. You all also, you know, you work in so many different mediums as well. And so I'm just wondering, like, in terms of like, are there mediums that you've picked that you maybe had no interest in before that you've picked up from other members of the collective? Are there mediums that any of you are interested maybe individually in working in that you have that hasn't yet made it into a 5/5ths project? How do you kind of determine the form that the work is going to take, I guess?
That's a good question. I mean, Troy's the painter. He'll always say, I'm a painter, even though that's not all that he does.
I feel like Troy be making me want to paint for sure.
Right, yeah, yeah.
Like
Yeah.
full time.
And I mean, I got a camera too, like,
That's
and
true.
Tanya was always like, get you a camera, get you a camera, I need you. I'm like, okay, finally, like 2 years later, I got one.
I mean, if you're gonna be at the Headlands, you need one.
Yeah,
it's
for real.
It's a lot to document.
Yeah. I don't know. That's a hard. Yeah. I feel like I think we just, everything is always like a balance between like what we envision for our work, but then experimenting and like playing. So like fivefifths is like playtime, even more so than it is like when I'm just by myself making. So yeah, I mean, there's so many things that like we've made that when I look back, I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. Like,
yeah, nothing is off limits. Yeah, that's,
yeah, exactly.
We need to make a sculpture or something. That'd be tight.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
that'd be tight.
Do you feel like then like within the collective, it's the space where you like you can try things that you're afraid of specifically? Like,
oh yeah.
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 I would say no. Well,
what?
Because I'm not scared of no medium. Like all of that shit, like all of it is cool to work with. Like it's just another challenge that we are gonna overcome. Like everything we did, we're like, okay, this is how we do it, and then we do it. Like
yeah, it's true.
The video, like I never made I made a video before, but it wasn't like what we did. Like we didn't know how to do it, we just did it.
Yeah.
Every meeting, we gonna do everything.
Nothing is off limits in fivefifths for sure.
Right.
It's kind of cool actually.
Do you have any, I mean, obviously everything's kind of uncertain in general with the world, but do you have specific goals or like plans for where the collective is going next? Projects that you're currently kind of putting together?
Yeah.
That you can share with us. I don't know. They might be secret too,
I'm like,
I don't know how. I'll go ahead.
Yeah.
I feel I'm getting insider knowledge now.
I hope y'all won't think I'm saying too much. We definitely have talked about getting our own space. We want to be able to do something with the space. Yeah. That's big. So, you have funding, and so all of that, we're going to have to venture into like grant writing and things like that, which we haven't done any, as a collective yet. Stuff like that. We want to publish more too, like the zine that we started at the Growlery. At the opening reception of the show that we were supposed to have, we would have had the zines available for everyone that came through. And so that didn't happen, and neither did the show. So just building off of that, we want to do more of that, and make a larger scale published work. I don't know, y'all could say what else.
Kind of covered enough.
Yeah.
That's okay.
We don't want to give too many details.
But like the zine project, I don't know if we already said this, but in the project with the zine, we were able to collaborate with both of the artists that we had within the residency. So we have a fully collaborative work. I don't even know if that even makes sense as a word, but like fully collaborative work with Vincent, where we all worked on it. And then we have a work same with Gaia. And I feel like that feels like kind of thinking like future fivefifths, it feels like that kind of encapsulates what we're trying to do, is like, or at least part of what we're trying to do. Cause we have parts of the zine that are just our work, that are collaborative. And then we have these moments like where we're bringing in other artists, and it always feels like really generative, and, you know, being able to put things in print and sort of archive these moments or like people's practices feels like really important to us. And so, continuing to do that. But you did say those are the big goals.
Yeah.
I mean, those are pretty sizable goals. So yeah, that's nothing. Like you guys are gonna be busy. It sounds like.
Yeah, definitely.
Did I always like to, you know, give space for people to plug things? So I'm just wondering if any of you also, either as Five-Fifths or in your individual practices, have like what projects you're working on, and what, if you have anything, any exhibitions or anything coming up or currently on view, Troy Shu, that you might wanna talk about a bit.
Troy.
Yeah, I think I only have, well, the shows that I have are up until, one show is up until the 12th, is at Cult Exhibitions. And it's a show that I did based on slang created within the Bay Area. The show is titled Yada Da Mean. So yeah, if you're in the Bay Area, go peep that. And then I'm in a group show at Altman Siegel. It's titled Fuck You, I Yield My Time. And yeah, it's a bunch of dope artists that are in the show. And yeah, go peep that. That's up until the 18th, I believe. So yeah.
Anybody else?
You've done some interviews too, Troy.
Oh, yeah. You can, I have done interviews.
Oh my God.
It's a lot of them, so I don't know which. I'm not going to talk about.
Well, okay. Juxtapose. Everyone could go cop them a Juxtapose.
Yeah.
Winter 2021.
2021 winter edition.
There's a review on Freeze too, right?
Yeah, Freeze also in print is coming out soon too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, been working. But
and
as
you
for
showed that
we have stuff coming, but just not quite talk about outable. But
Well, do you want to talk about anything that you worked on over, like shows that you had during the last few months or anything?
I was a part of a group show at the Museum Ludwig this past summer.
Where's that at? I just want to know.
It's in Germany, in Cologne. Oh, okay. Yeah, and I was a part of a group show. It was called Here and Now, Dynamic Spaces. A bunch of cool artists were a part of that show. I got to produce a video. I showed in the group show like a video work, and also this fabric collage thing that I made. And unfortunately, I didn't get to travel for that, but the work is still like online, and I think part of the show have featured, the sort of central point of the show was contemporary Anne's practice. And there's an article about my work and my work in that show via contemporary Anne. So that is online for people to read. Hopefully I actually have those banners just came back to me, and they're pretty large. So I'm kind of in a current project that I showed during that show. That's kind of the space that I'm in now, creating from, and it's just going to be an ongoing project. So I'm hoping to show some of that work here eventually. That is also in the works. That's me.
Yeah. I have nothing to report. I'm the one. I'm the nomad, so I've been moving around. But actually, the Nkiru invited me to do a video. Yeah, we did like a we called it the Checkin, which we have to. It's gonna continue. But we're in a pandemic, so everyone's schedules. Everybody's on Zoom all day. No, but we that we did it with the Richard.
Jonathan Nelson.
Yes, Jonathan Nelson. And so we'll probably continue to do that and talk to other artists. That's still kind of in league with what we were talking about earlier about when we get getting access and then bringing on other artists that we're, that are like our family into this space. So Nkiru definitely did that with the Ludwig show and their takeover of the Instagram, right?
Oh yeah, I did take over that Instagram.
Yeah, all these things feel so like long ago, even though they were not. Like 2020 is like been a decade.
It has been. It really has felt that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've been doing this a lot longer than we expected to.
Yeah.
Oof. And also felt like really short at times. Like the year's ending. I'm like, dang, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I really enjoy the way you all gas each other up and like are really very, you're all very aware of what everyone else is doing and each other's practices and each other's successes. And I think that's really lovely. I think, for collectives work together, obviously, but there's a way in which you all very clearly have a tight, close-knit relationship. And I think challenging kind of the idea that, labor has to be divorced from care in certain ways. I think there's like a really nice care that is taken to all of your work and to how you all like are with one another. And I think that's great. Have you felt, you mentioned, I think Tania just a second ago, the idea of these other artists within kind of your atmosphere that feel like family, like inviting family into this space is family like a really big way of the way you think about the work that you all do together? Do you see it as being more than just a working relationship, but a familial one?
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
You talk more than my mom. Then I talk to my mom. I'm like, yes.
Yeah. And I think go ahead. Yeah, and I definitely think when we think of artists that we think about our first show
right
at CCA. Dion Lee was a part of that show. Richard Jonathan Nelson was a part of that show. We've worked with Vincent in the past, and a bunch of other artists. I think that like when we think of 5/5, we do think about those people as like family. We're just like bringing them whatever we have access to, we share that. And of course, the more access we get, the more we can do, and the more people we can bring into that family. But I think it's definitely ingrained in how we move with each other and with how we engage with other artists, for sure.
Yeah.
And how we engage with space too. It feels like, actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a lot of your installation work is also there's an intimacy and there's an interiority that seems really important. The way you kind of structure them.
Yeah.
Oh, it looks like, okay, we have a question.
Oh.
So this is from Facebook. Does 5/5 Collective still have a relationship with CCA? Do you follow artists that come out of there today? I'm having a hard time understanding how there were only a small number of Black students in their arts program. Unless they were in SF, then I can understand. There was an SF. I can attest to that as well as also a CCA graduate.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, so does Five Fifths still have a relationship with CCA? And do you still follow the artists that come out of the MFA program?
I mean, we have a relationship with the people that work, like some of the artists that are employed by them, but like,
Yeah.
it doesn't like do anything for us or anything. That would be lit. Like,
That would be
they
lit.
need that.
Yeah.
They need us. Hey, holler at us.
I know, like CCA.
But
Yeah.
actually, yeah, I actually always have my eye on what artists are there, because like I was there. We're dope. There's some dope people that are there. So I always look to see what they're cooking up. But yeah, CCA, holler at us.
Yeah. And definitely like the cohort behind the cohort after us, like we definitely even though we were no longer there, we did form relationships with some of those students. Yeah. I mean, in fact, like Vincent wasn't our year, and then Gaia, I didn't actually meet Gaia until the Growlery, but I knew of Gaia and I'd seen Gaia's work. Yeah.
Do you see yourselves as in the place to be in sort of a mentor capacity to those artists, especially at, you know, again, also as a CCA, knowing how white that space can be, and so wondering if that's something that you've been invested in this idea of access is providing, you know, you're all like successful working Black artists in the Bay Area at a time when the Black community in the Bay Area is dwindling in certain ways. So like, do you see your role, or not even your role, but do you see your position, I guess, kind of in the Bay Area as being possibly serving in that kind of capacity for students who are starting, Black students specifically, who are starting out at CCA?
I wouldn't go as far as say a mentor, but like maybe something to look at that also did it. Cause yeah, I'm gonna be like making mistakes and all of this shit. Like, I don't know how to do it yet. Like, we got out of grad school 2 years ago, just starting to see how it's working. But like, we do have answers to questions, but not all of them.
Does anybody have answers?
I mean, I feel like we got a whole bunch of questions we need to ask or like the answers to first. So like, then we could be some mentors.
Just through experience, I guess. I feel like these opportunities to like talk about our experience and how we are still together, and like hopefully future projects, and like people, you know, like I think the energy that we started there will live on in how we connect with like more different spaces, like whether we have our own spaces or if we're like working with the institutional space. And I think in that capacity, and like I think just I guess what I came to mind was just like our first show, or like another reason why we started the collective at that time was because we were noticing that that the undergrad program and the grad program were super disconnected, and we're like, how do we? So we also had included, we had Eric Chip in our show. We didn't mention him earlier, but like we had other artists from the undergrad program be in that first show with us, because we wanted that connection to be had. And, you know, like hopefully people think or remember that, or like think about that, or like that affected them. I feel like it affected us. I'm still connected to both of the undergrads that we had in our in that show, and those connections still remain. So in those kind of ways, like a mentor, I guess, I don't know. You know.
There's another question. It's do you each have specific inspirations that you find your practice returning to repeatedly?
Music.
Good one.
Music for sure.
It seems like there's some science fiction in running through a few few different.
We got some sci-fi.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I've actually not spoken about this a lot. I've spoken it to Troy and Nkiru, but I'm always thinking about zombies, actually.
I was not expecting that answer.
Yeah. And the chair series actually is related to that in a way, but I haven't built a bridge in the way that I'd like yet in terms of like sharing it publicly. But yeah, the zombie figure actually comes out of Haiti, and I'm Haitian American, so I'm always thinking about that. I'm in popular culture and the use of the zombie across conversations. Like just recently, I heard a new term in reference to something going on with the pandemic, of course, in regards to zombies. But yeah, that's something I'm always going back to. Yeah.
For me, I think, yeah, I have a bunch of different inspirations that keep coming back to. I think I have I'm thinking about, I think I've been thinking about Howardina Pindell a lot this year and just over the last couple of years. Also, Faith Ringgold comes up for me a lot.
Yeah.
Just, yeah, I'm also like in this place of really wanting to connect with just like four mothers in general of mine, like in my creative lineage. And I think, so really exploring and doing research around that. Yeah, just Black feminist thinkers and mystics.
Yeah.
Like connect to like spiritualist people, like people.
Mm-hmm.
And music, of course, music. I feel like I've been listening to a lot of gospel music recently. Yeah, it's a lot of different. Thornton Dial, Lonnie Holly.
Yeah.
I keep naming people that
Yeah.
come up often for me. I've been thinking about Jack Whitten a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you all for all of your fantastic answers. This was a very interesting experiment, but I think it went really well. It was great to kind of hear how you all think about your practice, and to just kind of be able to sit and witness, your incredible friendship for a while as well, and see how that informs the work that you do together, and also the work that you put out into the world. So, always happy to have you at MOAD. You're part of the EAP program. You're part of our family for life. So unless you have any last things to plug before we end for the day, feel free to shout them out. Otherwise, thank you everyone who joined us for the conversation today as well. Those of you on Zoom, those of you watching on Facebook Live, and we'll be back next week.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
y'all.
you. Thank you.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, Elena.
Bye. It was great talking.
Good seeing you.
Thank you.
Good seeing you. Good seeing all of your faces.
Word.